Ik yuxatini, takat Johan. Ch'áagu ḳáax'u has du ch'éad ch'aya wutusaach, ya has du ʼatángi. Tachanach wutlidzi wan qanins ha ʼatángi. Qatlani at yachyati. Ye awa ate aya at atuhinia ch'áagu. Atatawe yu has qawtla atka. Ye awa achu awe chosaku. Wal achu ja yiskaw aya has chosatin. Ya gwall ashu aya choach. Ya has du ʼatángi. Ya qanach dik at qawshachit. Kachwa aqaya kachshachiti. Dasa has du tuasagu adatu has qawul atkin. Tlelweta. Tadechatna. Jabuta. Yata. Qa kina yegi. Qa yata tsu. Hechosaku tachkwas hechosaku dasawe. Choach anakidak. Kushta qa. Llukana. Qanakadate. Nakt ati. Ichta. Hechwa. Kayani. Heitl. Qayahai. Qahakina yegi. Achu aoich ayik ging chosaku adat. Wan qanins ya yidati ḳáax'u talkadeen has du tuash go adat yu has qawul atkin. Ya khatqo helwasaka qati. Ya yata awe kachshachit. Ya Yéil. Hu owe llingadani auxilliaries llingadani auxilliaries. Llingadani auxilliaries ya Yéil. Hu oqo auxilliaries qa qut qawul Yéil so. Aqa awe ya tachosaku tlay dech nask dahun kejin awe dusaku. Ya Yéil tlitli. Galdu shukwasai Yéil tlitli. Tleshaw deheni aqo has awas ku ya sa. Kuche noe qedachwa qa nakeshan. Ch'áagu dach nakeshan. Aqa awe gidzanuch. Gwal chudachnach chudechi wesagu. We qis kach shiaw zanugu shanak. Qedach awe hu owe au uwasa. Ye uwasa Yéil. Yéil tlitli. Gidzanuch. Ch'áagu awe qo gleit yachyati we Yéil. Yéil yu. Yudu wasak wega Yéil yu. Aqa awe gwal dukani. Qanuk. Yéil awe auhlits Aqa qanyach wuti wega. Yéil awe yudu wasak. Ya tlen at awe. Qa awe ausane Yéil. Aqa nas shark de wugud. Aqaya nas shark Yéil yudu wasak. Iltakatat ayadu sanku. Tlay nakaqo galtu kik ashakaku yudu wasak. Du eat with the shiwan qanins. Ye awacho iltakat with atzi. Du tachankiyan ye wutiyan. Ye awe. Dasa yisakuko awe Yéil dat.
Chish ha inki neek Yéil dus ʼáax'u dat. قد قاعد خسكون يسألون ليت يخيتي ييل وييل يو تساقيكشا
أو كي تخوتين أو قنوك ويتكاني خوستين قل ييل أيا أوتيك أتبوتيك أيا دو ياغو يكت أكوتا ياك أو ستين أجود أخد أيا أو قخ تكاني أو أيكتي وتي قنوك قني أيا ووشت جيت أي يوهس قول أت ييل قنا خوي چ'ااgu أتخدستي چ'ااgu خدخدستي تكاني خدس قنخ تلاقو چ'ااgu خدستي وقاو just قلك أياش تكت يلينك تاني كا ييل يانخكي كوكي أخ كتاغو يانخ كتاغو يانخوي أخ كتاغو وقاو صاخ أيا دوشاخ يو دتي وقنوك شا دخوي كي أوتن قيو أيخ أوتن قواز صاخ يدو ساقو أت أقا أوي وقواز يلتكت يوتين قنخوي قوت قواز هش أدي أوي هش أدي قنشتيني يوي ييل أخوي أكوت خيل أجوي كي أوي شتسه خط يطلاق أخ كتاغو كنخوي كتاغو أخ شكت أيقيتتي أقا أوي ويز صاخ أتادي أوي وخوخ قنوك وقوانس هو أوخي وووس يتو أجسكو أخيتي دي يقوخو أنا أتكختخا يقوتي أدي حسبو قوخ قنوك هدي يجي أتخا أوي دخيت أوتي قنوك ييل قنخوي أوخا وقاو كشي كواتي أدخوي سنجتاني أوكسيخوي ييل دي أوتي وخان ويستكت يسنجتاني قاقو أجس إيل هيني يسين كشكوز تين قنوك قوة شقت تلين دهيتي ييوتين يأوه أدخوي أوتوخ ويا أتاك أوي يسين تسوي شقت توتوي استكت ويسين قوخاتين أوي أو قوخ ييل سيدوجي دوسي إن وقنوكش ييل قنخوي دخيوكي أقاوي قنيوي أتاتيو توتتن وسكشوي كقوشات يستكت ويهين أجوي يا وقا قنخوي يجي أتخا أجوي أخ إيتي تاوها كاني هشواسك قوتي يقيا كقوتا قوك هشواسا خدسو يا تخيا نخوي خواخا ييل قنخت توسكو قداوش ييلي أو قداوش ييلي دكاني قوا هتسو يقدزجي وشقت كخ أوي وتا شقت كخ ييل wasa ushika qasane. Ya yis hini away. Qatawut. Achawe gande wugud Yéil. Aqaqhuashi away qas. Qaqeilhatli. Keilhatli away. Qanachawe awatak qas. Yeltakat ye wutin. Katlginach away. Hit ye uwagut. Get the kani khantu agut. The cuts a kach away. Yen a one gut a ya. We Kate Hartley. A ka gant our ton. Gant our rich way. We cars. A yuk away. Kone a ya. Shaka yuk away the kani. Kani. Jade khatna u. Chush kach eat that little. Chush kach eat that little. At outlaken away. Kanuk. Kanachoy kadeek to katu a good. A joy. Yeah, okay. Jade khatna u. Aka gandhi wugud. Gandhi wugud away. Do na ati. Aka ooze it. Yéil. Gaud hit. Ya ʼatángi. Ach away awutsuch. Dil aya qanachi hin ta de ausane. Atlain hin away dil kat ye wuti. Akawa away a dachwut dakin. De kane ko a kuchwut de gut ka ausitin wasa atwune. Kat Yéil, tli. Ye away gan kawushi aya a ye chutzeti. Ho away to jigite wuti away we gan wushi yegi. Kanuke kashat. We seek kawushi kunachawe our shot Yéil. Kesh a day a dachun dakini ya. Kunachawe a kawa ak. Kliye wuti. Qane away shoot out the ak the kani kanuk. Khan. Kan away kutzeti te tayir. It's ayat the daye wutin. Kanach away. Ye away. Yéil. Wutlets away ga. Kanach away. The tayir too. Khan. Achaway. The katu shetzini tinakawa akadachu dakini. Ayawat lak. Zatko yeka ayawat lak. Ho away tuchachuti ko a. Yes, the cut we sing it on a car with the keen. But Kundachoe cow do a sigh. Ye away. Goshki she nache with the keen. A car we heen. Do hedachoe a what look. On cut a ya with the gate. Ḳáax'u auxilliaries on. Goshtzatach a day with the keen. Do hedachoe with the look. A car away where Atki car with the gate. Which the cut when the die heen klein, gaat he nak, kan the die heen, auxilliaries on. Ye awa a yawat lak, a Yéil, we yis heeni. A qatlech Yéil yuch, usatien we gao, a Yéil awe ho.
Galchish, Kunakwake.
Jeez. Yata tlelkadin ho ach dasawe dat you has awul at yata tachwas echasaka. Yata ko Ch'áagu genki ḥasaku adat. Shukana ko Tlaik Tlekadin Hasaku. Tlekak Enach with secret society Yahwutin. Hechwasaku a dot koa. Wekonak a date. That's away. Klingit Enach, that's away. Isakuka.
Sienaka, Kunaka date, Gleka Henak.
Let's play Kak Enach. Klingit Enach. That Yachsati.
Kunaka date. Ah.
Wait, King Talk Adi.
Ye awa. Ye awa. Dat Yachsakoa. Kityach. Yayach. Khatyach. Oh, chat. Dat Yach. Oh, Yak. Dat Yachsatutin. Hintak Adi. Ye awa.
What take that yaxadutin.
Oh, dat Yachsatutin. Gwell. Hintak Adi Sati. Ye awa. Kit uwaya. Khat uwaya. Khatke uwaya. Kitke.
Yai uya.
Yai. Ye awa khwaach. Kit awa awacha. Ka yai awachatsu. Kesh yai uwaya. Kesh yai uwaqwa. Kit ke uwaya. Oh, hit clean uwayatsu. Ye awa. Dekina. Hast du kusti atutye yetitsu. Wasko, you do a sock. Chishuku at wasko, kakonakadate. University of Alaska, Anchorage, has awa tau. Ha'ayi. Ye awa yechwaji. Kudaksawe. Dasa hasuwa hain. Kish has to ayakwa. Coach. Uwaya. Kish a jineko a kudziti aqini. Sa yachawe aqini. Wan qanin zayachwasatin a dekatishhitye. Okay. Naqt'ate. Hechwa Kayani Hake Kayahai Yatage Yisukuke Kayahai
Soul,
Ka Yata
spirit or soul.
Kayahai.
one Kanins Yata too Kaya
Kagwantan Kayahai hit. Doch Yandastakya.
Shkashnik Kudziti to Yéil Kayahai hit It play noa uat a ye wo good a ye uwa good Kas ye at Koa to die would he joy a dahushi.
Khosakun ye khojin kaya hai with photograph ye uti.
Wait atsu. Kakanach yake Gwash yata yohanach twasagu yisatini. Kakwashahid yuakshi. Ayahai. Yashtakata ayayata. It's
What's up do is like movie hai.
ḳáax'u da hai. Oops. Tl'áax'u ḳáax'u ʼatángi. It's ḳáax'u. Ch'áagu ḥáax'u da hai. Movie ḥáax'u. Yak ḥáax'u. Yehuji yata ya ga ka yata. Ch'áagu yaltakat at yata adach. Oops.
Wasa idu wasak kaya ka yahayi cocaine.
Cocaine again?
You know, like in Chocat, the ghost face.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, what? Wait. Gitlakach on the cliff, Iksha?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, kaya hai cocaine again?
I don't know.
Gwashi. Hechasaku asatu asakweta. Wait, that's hasatin. Oops. Gwash achawe atunachtu teen awe shukwa aya hasawastini. Kunachawe ach hasakaut de hake. Ya Ch'áagu ḥáax'u. Ha! Ach yakwahe ko hasawashat. Ye awe yehasuwaji.
So is yak guahe yagu one of those verb derivative nouns?
Yeah, and it's a pretty wild because so these four things in combination tell you there's a future verb, and then this means to be removed. So you'll see it in to gut a fish or to remove the insides of a clam or something. Qayyaq, shiqayyaq, and what is the fish gutting one? I always forget that one. Qatwaqiq.
So that means what exactly? Yak guahe yagu.
So I think Yahai means it's moving along somehow. Like I think that's like you could say, well, you usually wouldn't say it like that. And so the thing with like making a noun out of a verb is it usually is in some ungrammatical form. Like so you can spot it like pustit and kutit. Like those can't be verbs, but they come from verbs. And so they get put into this thing where it's like it looks ungrammatical. It looks like it can't exist like that. So you would say at uwaha, or you'd say adewuha, or hadeyanahin. You could say any of those, but just to say like yahayi, like now it's become a noun. So I would say that at a sort of base level, this noun kind of means it's moving invisibly. It's moving. And so that's kind of the basis of this meaning. And then yakqaheyaku sounds like to me that movement is going to be removed. But it hasn't happened yet, but it's going to be, which is really wild. And so then, and for a long time too, I thought yakqaheyaku was just for like non-human things, but then I was corrected by a Teslan speaker who said, no, it's in people. And so there's a yakqaheyaku in everything. But then when a person passes away, like this, so a lot of this video, they're talking about a lot of these big concepts is the spirit leaves the body. And if they're going to become a helper of people, they turn into a yéik or a yégi. But then for a lot of people, they'll either return or they'll go to decessive. And it kind of depends on what you believe, but this is what the language documents anyways, is that yakqaheyaku means it's a move. It sounds to me like it's an invisible movement that's going to be removed.
So it's not this then. Getting something is symbolic of having its spirit removed.
No, that's it just has this same suffix. That's all I was pointing out. Is that suffix is there to like remove the fish guts.
Goodness, geez.
Ah.
Could it be because since it has not been removed, it's still with us?
Yeah, because it's like, so there's a future there, which means like, well, at some point, it will be removed, and there's some different things you could do as well. Like you could take a future prefix, and then you could have, you're going to have your classifier and your root, and then you can have a decessive on there. So you can say, "Ḳáax'u, I was gonna eat." And so now you're sort of saying I was going to, but it didn't happen. And that one's, once you learn how to do a future, you basically just throw the decessive on the end and you've got it.
Aquahian.
Yeah, so you could say ḳáax'u, like it, or you'd say yakqaheyan, it was going to move.
So if you were saying, like you just said, Yakwahayan, what if you said Yakwahayan? Is that also like it always like threatens to happen?
Well, so like if you take something like you take nakuch, so you get na kuch, right? So that's like, and we got to throw like some kind of, we'll throw this around like at nakuch. They're always cruising around, always going in their boat or their car. So if you want to put decessive onto, you could put decessive onto this one. I don't think you can go a future habitual decessive, like they were always going to used to. It starts to cancel itself out by that point.
Mm-hmm.
But you can add it to this and you'd get, what would you get? Anyway, I'll get you.
At nakuchin.
Yeah, oh well. So you'd end up with probably
Oh, J changes the J.
right? So it changes to a J, and that's you get jin or jun at the end of a verb. That means they used to always go around.
Thank you.
Yep.
Good
So yeah, do these multi-combos. That's it.
So if you added new gene,
Oh.
Eugene, so always used to. But you wouldn't do that. Yeah, you would, Eugene. So that would mean always used to, right?
Yep. And that would work as well. And so in terms of when to use a habitual and when to use this nooch form, that's something we should probably look at a little bit more. But yeah, Eugene would also work. Some of them, like these travel, they seem to like, some would like to use just the CH, and some of them like to use nooch and then Eugene, like always used to. And then there's a couple others that are kind of, the nooch has a couple of cousins that do a kind of a similar thing, which maybe I'll, from the book of More Than You Wanted to Know. Let me go find them. But just remember, they should always be as a minus I classifier if you're going to put nooch on the end of something. So here they are. Let me zoom in. So you have nooch, which is going to be niche for some, and that's going to be always, right? So that's, you hear that in the Ch'áagu story by Ch'áagu. So he could say Nujin, what we always used to talk about, but we don't anymore. Which you could probably talk about with this very video. There's a bunch of stuff in here that folks tend to not talk about anymore. Then you can have nuke, so that could come in the same spot, and it means happening at the same time or happening kind of in a row, right? This, then this. And then nukni, when this happens, then this other thing might happen. And then qanikan, or qanukan is how I would see it. And that one was popping up in this one short story about when the person is up there ready to shoot this other thing, right? They were talking about hunting fur seals. And at first I kept saying, like, qanukan, I was like, they're sitting? What on earth? And then I had to sort of realize what I was looking at there. They're not as common, but you will see them. Austin used to use, if you look at the Yéil story from him, he uses, I think this one and probably this one. And then this one was popping up in that one story. And I guess this one is more like only when this thing, then this other thing.
So something like if someone was to say to me, "Kananik nooch," that they're always used to be talking to me, or wouldn't that change kananik? Because you're telling somebody to talk to me, right?
Yeah, kananik should be like a command form.
Yeah.
So I would expect maybe kaniknooch.
Nick nooch. Yeah.
That's a good question. Let me go find. So if we go down here, and then like as far as like it gets into repetition too. So we see like kananik, like achin kananik, du'in kananik. Tell me, tell them. Kishkanik, don't tell about it. You know, like I don't know. Let's say you fell down and you didn't want to say, don't tell anybody I fell down, running with my bag of dry fish. You know, and then you could put khat in front of it, and you have like don't tell on me. So, but then you get telling about it, tell about it, don't. Well, to not tell or not telling, like this one. You say ʼkeltasach kadunik. That's a fun one. Nobody tells me anything. Keltas, I think it's in the sample sentences maybe. Khan is a contraction of achin. Keltasa achin kadunik. Nobody tells me anything. And you could also say kelkun kuchanik. I don't tell anything to anybody. I guess you'd say keltasa kun kuchanik. I don't tell anything to anybody. Like if you're trying to get that juicy secret out of someone. Let's see. Then they got used to tell about it. Didn't used to, perfective, told, will tell. A kaniknuch. There it is.
So that's how you would say that.
Mm-hmm. And this is one where a third person object is usually going to be the case because that's the information. Achin akaniknuch or achin akaniknujin. They used to always tell me about it. And coming back, like this is a good segue into our conversation about what are these things doing? The neek verb, the ḳáax'u verb, and the taan or ʻat verb. Those are very similar things, but they have different purposes. So to start, like looking at the verb root neek, that, let's see, I think I got a little, I haven't looked at this one in a while, but I always have too many things open. Hold on. Okay, so let's see, where does this start? We'll skip hearing for now. Hold on. So starting with ḳā. So this verb ḳā has to do with like the exact thing that someone says. So when we're going to use this verb, we're quoting somebody, right? So you could say, Martin Luther King Jr. Be true to what you said on paper, right? So that's, you're quoting somebody. You're trying to use their exact words. Smitty told me they don't know anything, right? And so, but you're using this is how you drop the quotation marks, is what ḳā is doing. It's not to say like they told me it's dinner time or they told me this. It's not information. It's focused on they said these exact words. And that's why sometimes you get like a promise or an announcement or to name a price, right? They told me it was $10, right? Because you're getting this sort of thing. And the big difference is between the zero classifier, which is they said this thing, and the S classifier, which would be they said this thing to somebody. And in that case, the object is who they're saying it to. Yechat yausaka. They said this to me. Ye yausaka. I said this to them. So if I'm giving you the blow by blow of what led up to our big fist fight, you know, it'd be like, Yechat yausaka. Nana'i. Like they said to me, Nana'i. And then I punched him in the face. Or maybe it's something nicer, but you know, we can have a little dramatic moment. But that's what the ḳā verb root is doing. We use this to talk about the specifics of what they said. And then the other thing is like the yausaka one or a yausaka. That one should be a diaqa in the imperfective. It just switches. For whatever reason, they have a switch in the imperfective. Yawaqa switches to ḳáyaqa in the imperfective. So both of them, they get a change in the thematic prefix, which is kind of interesting. Any questions about that one?
Well, then where does Tsuyeyanaka?
Say it again. Say that exactly.
I know that's what it means, but how does the ka, yanaka?
It's a na.
So it's a na verb. Okay.
Yeah. So you could say yeyanasqa. Say it to them.
Ah,
Right? Like I told you what to say, so you could make your first move on this person that you're really infatuated with. Eyanaska. Say it to him.
Okay, there's the na is the conjugation.
So that's going into the command form.
Ah,
So tsuye yanaka. Say it again. But again, it's like those exact things. It's not because you could say, we'll get to neek. Neek is all about information. Ka is about the exact words.
I thought that if someone said "Ye chet the dayaka," they were sort of implying that the dayakar like insulted them or said something that was unpleasing.
Well, the yechat would just be, they are saying to me. All that really does is put it in the imperfective. Now, if there's something there, and you could put other things in front of it, like if you put talk in front of it, that's criticizing and speaking ill of somebody. Shtugate, that would be to insult someone. So you could say, Shtugate, chat yausaka, they insulted me. Or you could say, Shtugate, I'm gonna insult you. And then maybe they preemptively punch you in the face. It's a punch in the face type of night, sorry.
Ye stugate shakte chudzaget seth at achtashe.
Yeah, what?
Does that mean maybe I offended you all? It was not my hope.
Yeah. So you could say, Shtugate, Yi Yauch Saka, Kesh at Achtashikha. That's not what I was hoping.
Tuye yanaka.
Can you put it in chat?
Yeah. Well, I'll just write it up. Yeah, I'll put it in chat and I'll write it down here too. So you could say, Shtugate, Yi Yauch Saka, Kesh Ye at Ach Shi. And then you bring out the Ch'áagu. But you also, like, I remember I saw this one, like, comedy thing. I can't remember what it was, but he'd be like, no offense. Then he'd say something really offensive to somebody. And they're like, what? He's like, I said no offense. I said no offense. Right. So, yeah. You can't say, like, nana e, and then break out the shtuqait ye achsaka ye atachtashi. But yeah. Ye atachtashi is hoping for something. Okay.
It's not what I was hoping for.
Okay, so neek. So ka doesn't really have an associated noun, like, but what I mean by that is neek is a noun, and it means news or gossip. So it's all about the news or the information. So you're using this one to say, like, they told me about this situation. They told me about this thing. They told me what happened. It's less about those exact words and more about they told me that something had happened or told me a story. Yeah, exactly. So it's all about like the chunk of information rather than the specifics of what was said. And this one has an object that's most often not going to change, and the object is going to be the information. If the object becomes a person, now it becomes like you told on the person, or, Yéil, he would say this. He would say, don't tell on me, right? And then when people tried, he would rip their tongue out. So if Raven says, don't tell on me, don't tell on Raven, unless you want to just be banished to the reef and just make noises all the time. So this is all about giving facts, information, testifying, but it's all about a chunk of information, right? So this would be the case. So for some examples, right? So like, let's say you have some kids and kid number one comes and says, they're doing something bad, so they tell on them. Kinde hasakawa neek. And then, and so what you do is you would say, Yeya naska, ishi day away. You're saying, go tell them, don't do it, knock it off, right? But then the neek part would be more like information, right? Hastuin kananik, kuik yakwahich, kahasawa ich. Go tell them there's a kuik coming and they're invited. It doesn't matter how you do it, it matters that you just do it. So that's what the neek is doing. You also have explaining, telling a story of something, or telling stories. And then if you put K or kinde in front of it, that's tattling. An example for my kids, like, sometimes they kind of battle with each other and then they come and try and pull you into it, get you to be the referee. And I'd say, and they'd say, I'm not tattling, but they're being mean to me. So they would say, they would say something like that. So they would understand like what I was saying, but they would tattle regardless. Sometimes you got to step in and mediate whatever's going on with them. But that's how the neek one works. Any questions?
Yeah, the phrase you said to your kid, "Ch'áax'u ushku kinde kaduniki." Does that mean I don't want people narking?
Yeah, I don't want no tattletale. That's how I translate. Kindekadunigi is a noun. It's become a noun, and it's kind of based on this one. So you'd say kinde kadunigi. Yeah, that could be an arc too, which is funny because, well, I don't want to tell too many stories. But I have a relative who got in big trouble. Big trouble. I was mad. And their friend called me up and said, I know who the narc was. I was like, that's not what I'm worried about. I'm worried about the thing, not the kindekadunigi. Because we need a whole big lesson on correcting behavior in Tlingit.
Would a stool pigeon be like a kinde kadunigi ka?
Well, like the pigeon that carries the messages?
Well, no, just like a guy that tattles.
The
Oh.
narc. Yeah.
Oh, okay. See, I don't know. I don't even know these terms. It's like a bird? Yeah, well, he'd probably be a kindikadunigi. But then there would be this other thing too, like there might be some sort of the one who tricks the bad people. Something like, but I guess it depends whose side you're on too. You might have a different name if you're the drug lord. You might have some kind of name for them. Like you might call them the poutine, but those aren't necessarily bad things in our culture as far as like a rats.
So which verb for when you're explaining how to do something?
Well, you have this one, which it conjugates exactly the same as the telling information one, but you put kunach dak in front of it. So you could say hastu in kunach dak kananik. Explain it to them. But this isn't really instructional, but it's sort of like, I'm going to tell you why we use the dog salmon. I'm going to tell you why you're not supposed to put all the fingers on a chilcat blanket or whatever the thing is. So this has to do with explaining. Like, again, it's the focus is on information. Instructing someone to do something. I do think there's let's see. So there is this one, which is to give orders. So it kind of depends. There's like, commanding someone to go do something, which is why you have ʻáax'u. That is this verb, and it's a related form. Let's see, I think I have it. Maybe it's not in there. I guess it's from this one. So there's these two down here, which are kind of similar. And then I think there's even one more without. Yeah, I think I'm missing one. Okay. So there's one without any thematic prefix, which would be this. It would be ḳáax'u, subject, 0, qa. That means to have orders over something. Like ʻáax'u comes from the tide commander, right? He commands the tide because he was the moon. That's Raven's uncle. But if you put the j in front of it, you're instructing someone to do work. But it's not like let me tell you how to do this. It's like let me tell you to do this, right? So that's the difference there. This one is more like my uncle told me to chop wood. That would be this one, right? You were given a job, and so when you put qa in front of it, my auntie told me to sing this song. My mom told me to give this speech, right? So this is when you're told to say a certain thing. Closely related. And then there's, I don't think I have it on here, so I'll switch to the, back to here. Then there's one more way that I know of to do this, which is ja. So this is to instruct or to show, to advise, to give counsel. So this is the one they use for when the crane told Raven's mother to swallow that rock. So they'd say, Ye'owe ashukujes. This is how he's instructing her, right? Or you could say, in this case, you go back and you say for the subject to show the object. So in this case, you could say, Ch'áagu ade dus iye ʼáax'u. My grandparents showed me how to make fry bread. So this would be like a demonstration, a teaching type of a thing. And then there's different ways to, you could say achi auxilliaries, right, to teach someone. But this is sort of like an instruction where you're kind of demonstrating or you're getting them to do a certain thing. I've always heard yak for the canoe skipper, but there's also, you could say yak iga is the name of the rudder that they use.
It just seems like that one about the person giving directions or telling you.
Oh, right. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. Well, you could have that, like someone, especially someone who guides a whole bunch of people on how to, like if someone's bringing back canoe navigations and knowledge of the water and the weather and all this other stuff, especially if it comes to dugouts and stuff, then you probably could be looking at that, yeah.
Yaksati kind of reminds me of the whole idea of Noxati. Like who's in charge of
Yeah, well, we have ʼáax'u, but then the ʼáax'u itself should be examined because like ʼáax'u would be, you could say that, like say some dog comes up and we say, Gusu ʼáax'u, where's your master? Because that would be like a correct relationship between a dog and a person, usually. But then there's also like now ʼáax'u, the boss of the whiskey, but that's the word for alcoholic, so. And then ʼáax'u is like you're the boss of the medicine. But like that ʼáax'u is, it's sort of like, it's not like you're always in command of it. But Yéil ʼáax'u, the work boss. Go back to kids. You gotta tell them sometimes, ʼáax'u you're my boss. I love my kids. I do. Sometimes they get a little bossy though. So you gotta be able to push back and sing it and try to pretend you're the boss anyways.
Yeah, away.
Okay, so this leaves us with taan and ot. And everything that you see with taan, there's basically an ot form. So this one, you switch it to ot, you change the classifier to L, and you kind of got it, right? But this one has to do with thinking and talking. So I think the focus of the verb root is on communication. So this is where you say, like, I gave a speech, we had a conversation, I talked to them, I'm talking on the phone, and any of that kind of stuff where like the verb is like all about talking, but not about the information. And so just learning how to switch back and forth with these is really useful. Because I find myself doing it all the time. I'll start saying ye ya waqa, and I'm like, oops, I need to switch it to ye khat yaw saqa, ye a yaw saqa, right? Because someone's telling someone else this specific thing. And so this one, you wouldn't necessarily have like specific content, right? So if you're going to say, but maybe you could say, hastuin yuchachwatan yahakustiyidat. I talk to them about our culture. But it's like really pulls back to a loose affiliation with the content, and it's more about the speaking. But then to say, like, we were having a conversation about this thing, and then I said this thing or that thing. Tatsati, yeah.
So we were having a conversation about cooking.
Yeah, so you would go down to, you would use the ot one. So we'll jump to the dictionary. We'll go up to ot, and we'll go down. I think it's pretty, to converse. So then you go and look for the perfective. You at would just dot. We were talking about cooking.
So
So
just talking, not teaching each other anything, just talking about it.
yeah. So we're, and then if like if I know how to cook the spaghetti and you don't, then we'd switch to the shakawa verb, right? Or if we were teaching each other because you know about baking cookies and I know about, making s'mores or whatever the things are, right? Then you could have wuchi wututle tu. We were teaching
Each
each other.
other.
And so it's like using these and just sort of figuring out which verb it should be and then how it should switch once you sort of start using it. And if you put wooch in there, and even I would do it with wooch in, I would switch it to a plus D. Okay.
Gonna teach.
I guess I missed completely. What's the difference between the ot and the taan?
Taan is one, ot is more than one. That's all.
Of course.
That's
Sheesh.
And Renee,
ah,
why would you do you need the wuching, or does it mean something different? Just means to each other, or
it's to each other. Like you could say we were conversing, and it's already built in there. But if, the instances where I might do that is just to sort of specify like it was really with someone or there was like a lot of back and forth, or if I say like I really miss them because we used to visit together, we used to talk together, but you don't have to have it in there.
So uta is in singular, ton as in many,
Switch.
except for, okay. I was going to say, okay, that makes more sense.
Yeah,
Thanks.
use tunk.
Like I was just thinking, like, does that mean, the people or many ton?
Well, some people think it's related to the empty container, but I find that insulting because then your head's empty. What? I kind of treat it as its own verb roots, but who knows? There's so many of those ton verbs that I just
Lots.
treat it as its own root to just keep them separated so you can see them. Okay. Okay. Let's see. What do you folks want to do for these last 18 minutes? Questions?
Could you identify the speakers in the movie so that if we do want to talk about that, we can refer to them correctly?
Okay, so I don't know all of them. So this is, the first one is the sort of, the MC of the
Ah.
Yisukuge.
Is that Andrew? No? If I speak over.
I think he talks next. Andrew P. Johnson.
Oh,
Yeah,
Ah.
he talks next.
Use the second one.
So this one, I'm not too sure. So I'll ask around and see who might know.
Oh, gonna cheese.
And maybe I could track down where I got this to. I think it was like on a CD that I'd received from Zach Jones maybe a decade ago. And I was just cleaning out my very messy office and found it. And so,
Mhm.
Ch'áax'u, your hand is up. Do you got a thought or question, or is it just up?
It's after you're done with this part, because I'm interested with this as well.
Okay.
this is a treasure. I'm glad you found it.
Yeah. This
Andrew Johnson. Yeah.
this is Ichtek Ish.
Ah. So yeah, Yanaka?
Ichtek Ish. Ichtek Ish. Andrew P. Johnson, he tells the ḳáax'u story in Hashuka, and he makes there's one short speech of his, and maybe it's an excerpt from something, in Hatu Nagu Yis. So maybe we'll get into the deeper, we'll just keep sort of diving into some of the content on Wednesday. It's a bit more intense than I was like, hey, everybody watch this. And I watched, I was like, whoa.
But it was lovely to hear the language being used so normally and conversationally. I think that was great to be exposed to.
He turns and talks to Charlie Joseph right there. So that's ḳáax'u. Charlie Joseph, he was ḳáax'u. And Andrew P. Johnson was ḳáax'u. And I'll try and get the name of this gentleman here.
Yeah.
Forrest, do it. Iksha.
And then at 34, yeah, that guy.
Yisukuge. I don't know this one either.
It said his Klingon name though, right?
Did he?
I think before he came up, they did.
Oh, okay. Let's see if I can grab it. I think it's right here. Okay, hold on. I gotta turn the audio on.
Ашкасника хухохох. Я так канечка гохсаник. Я кая шанак ая сискохосите. Юшкатушник. Я эксотишкасник я хакук. Пикаканакут я хакатко.
Mr. Chairman,
They might be just saying what he's talking about.
Yeah, I thought they did, but that guy next to him though is Walter Williams. Yeah, actually,
Yeah, what?
he's
Called
280.
Walter Babe Williams. Yeah, what? And then I don't know this one either.
Kitchnash.
Oh, Yaksha.
He gets this.
So that's maybe Kitchnach, George Davis.
Yeah. Where's the other recording? There was another recording I was listening to, and he was there. Oh, the celebration, 82, when they brought him up, it was a lot older. But
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I'll check with a couple folks and see, and try and get a roster.
Isn't that Cecilia be sitting behind him there?
Oh gosh, yeah. Yeah, okay, yeah,
Mhm,
maybe.
mhm.
That's about where that's as far as I got, was about that far.
Isn't it a repeat? Once the audio goes off, isn't it a repeat of the same?
Okay.
It
I
is.
think so.
It
Yes.
started over again about after an hour.
Mhm. It just doesn't have the audio or the video.
Ah, okay. Sheesh.
when I think when you shared it with us the end of last semester, there was like a document to it, De Laguna. It said that she had a bunch of other recordings that were like just in random places. And is that kind of where this one was? Just like scattered out there somewhere?
I don't remember. I think no. I think I got this on a CD because Sea Alaska Heritage Institute about a decade ago did a project where they just hired people to listen to all their recordings, and it was mostly Qoneote, Marsha Hodge, and Kingisi, David Katzik. Kingisi probably did most of it, and just made a summary of what was on the tape, and that's how we got the Downhauer finding guide. And it was a project that was, I think, the one who was doing a lot of the work was Zach Jones when he was there, which is wonderful because with the other thing is this information hasn't always been super accessible. Uh, one time I was doing a project with some folks in Ch'áagu, and this guy who was like kind of the head of the BIA Alaska office said they got like a ton of recordings down there from when they did the land claims, a bunch of history of this area. And so I called them up, and I knew the person I talked to. I was like, "Oh, I heard you guys got all these recordings of Skagway," and they just cut me off. They said, "You're not going to get them." I said, "What?" And they said, "You're not going to get them." I said, "That's our history. That's I would like to hear that." And they said, "We're protecting it." And I said, "From whom?" And they said, "We're protecting it for the Klan." I said, "We're the Klan." So, but things have changed. Things have changed, and so really sort of trying to push for more. At least I have been pushing for open access and stuff. And this also, there's some difficult conversations to be had sometimes because someone will execute a project that's wonderful, but then, you know, I don't know. Let me pause the recording. And we're back, and nothing secret happened.
No, we were just talking about ravens. So about the raven, Yéil Cannon, you were talking to us about Gunuk in the water and how the water got to Earth earlier. But sometimes maybe I'm remembering wrong, but remember the one about, is it still Yéil when it's talking about the fog in Gunuk?
Yeah, that's the one. So that's at the beginning. And
Mhm.
so the loose translation of that story is Raven's out paddling in his boat, and he sees this other boat. So he goes up to it, and that's Qanuk,
Mhm.
it's his in-law. And they start getting into this argument about who's older. And so they're like, I was born first. And so like, oh, I was born first. I was born when the world was just covered with mud. And so Qanuk gets mad and takes his hat off and calls the fog out. And the fog gets so thick that Raven can't see, and he gets scared. And he says, okay, 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 you're the oldest. You were born before me. So he calls the fog back into his hat, and he puts it on. And then they go to his house. And then they have a big old dinner. There was no... So I think the sequence is like Raven is born and defeats his uncle. His uncle floods the world, and Raven rebuilds it with the sea otter. And then Raven goes out to the Aleutians and gets fire out of a volcano. And then he runs into Qanuk, and then this is the order. This is the order that I believe things go in. And then that hat is called ḳáax'u. And so, and then while they're eating, he's got this big bentwood box that he keeps in the corner of his house, and he dips up a cup of fresh water. It's the only fresh water in the whole world. So Raven rebuilt the world, but it was all salt water. And so he's like, "This is delicious. How am I gonna get it all? How am I gonna get it?" And so he's pretends to be sleepy from eating too much. So he's like, I'm gonna go sleep. So Qanuk is smart as well and says, "Okay, me too," and sleeps on top of the box. So Raven goes outside, sneaks outside, gets a stick, puts it in dog poop, wipes it on Qanuk, throws the stick outside, and comes back and says, "Oh man, you crapped on yourself. Shka I did it." And then that's how you say that one. And so he gets up all embarrassed and runs outside to wash himself off. And so Raven pushes that lid off, or pushes it back, and dips out a bunch of water. And he tries to fly out. He was white, but Qanuk, there's a spirit in the smoke hole that he had command of. And so he said, "Grab him!" And it grabbed him. And then he built this great big fire, and he's trying to burn him up. But he ended up just smoking him up and then singeing his bottom, and it made Raven wiggle his way out of there. But when he came out, he was black. And as he flew around with a mouthful of water, it started dripping out of his beak, and it was making all the lakes, and the ʻáax'u, and all the rivers, which I think Hinuk is a small stream that fish can't run up. Then there's a whole range, I think, of ʻáatini, which means it's a river big enough for fish, and fish are in it. So then you got Nadayihin, Kanadayihin, and Héen. Héen would be the big rivers like Alsech and Jilkat and Nas and Shtokhin and ʻáax'u. It's kind of these five big ones: the Stikhin, the Nas, the Chilkat, and the Taku. I think those are the big ones. Those are the ones they call Héen. And then I think Nadayihin is probably a running river, and Kanadayihin is probably a fast running river. And that's kind of the difference between all the rivers. But I meant to ask ḳáax'u and Ish because he was telling me about them. But I didn't quite get the Nadayi and Kanadayihin, but that's my prediction.
Cool. And I guess I was asking because that book you guys were doing that you were talking to us about with all the Raven histories, I kind of wondered if that was chronological, because I think about when the Raven got fire for the people, and he was still white, as I heard at that time.
Okay, well, there'll be a link on tonight's page. It's called Yéil. I don't know if I'm supposed to share it, but whatever. For the people. Oops, we're recording. But then you could take a look, because Ch'áagu tells him in a certain order. What's wild is Ch'áagu was recorded in 1950, and he was probably 90. And then Nakashan was recorded in the 1980s, I think, which I guess is 30 years later, but he was probably pretty old as well. And they're almost identical. They're almost exactly the same.
Austin used to tell us in an order too.
Yeah, and so his is in there, the one he did at KHNS, and then Kusky, Susie James. I would say those are probably some of the big ones, and then Shah Dog, and also the ones by Catherine Mills. That's another pretty complete series. But it's interesting because some of them they hit like a few of them, and some of them like kind of run through almost all of them. Nakashan might be the most, as far as the most in a row, that might be the winner. Fastest would probably be Susie James, and all the audio's out there too. It's really fun. It's super complicated and super fun.
Sheesh.
Okay, you got plenty to wade through. So yeah, we'll talk about that video again on Wednesday, and then some of the concepts that they were talking about as well. Then any questions you might have about some of the Tlingit. It's pretty intense, like really big language and really big concepts. And then maybe we'll get back into that ḳáax'u shkalnik that we didn't finish. And any questions you folks might have. And maybe some verb assembly. I don't know, we got so much to do. That's why we're here. Okay, anything else before we go?
We heard lots of decessives, you know, with the Usagan
Yeah.
and Kustian, and we were happy we recognized them.
Yeah, maybe pick, if you want to, maybe pick a few spots, or pick one spot or something, and we'll sort of take a look at a few of these spots and kind of talk about what we're hearing. And it's fun. It's really fun to be able to listen to this stuff, and then, you know, for me to think, even if I went back 5 years from where I'm at now, if I listened to this 5 years ago, I'd probably be like, man, I don't know. There's like this thing, maybe that thing, but I could follow along pretty close now. But there's still some times where I got to back it up, and I get tired. But it's also amazing.
Well, we heard decessives and we were happy we heard them, but we didn't know what we were listening to. So,
Well, we'll unpack some of it too.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, the whole story was in there about like the taan origin. It was in there. It's cool. Okay. Good as cheesh.
Cheesh.
Sheesh.
Sheesh.
Ah,
Yo, Christine.
yeah, kwati.
Galchish.
Ah.
Hi, Juan Klein.
Hi.
Still trying to leave the meeting.